he made a whole load of films typically about 3 a year. I mean, the films get panned now, but they were very popular at the time. I mean, they all made money. And what's interesting is they all made Elvis a lot of money. And I think Colonel Parker comes in for a lot of unfair criticism and saying, he ruined Elvis's career. Personally, I think he saved Elvis's career. Because if you look at American rock and roll, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Buddy Holly, all of those people had their rock and roll careers were over. Jerry Lee Lewis reinvented himself as a very successful country artist. I mean, he's had 40-odd hits in the country charts. And Colonel Parker was a very astute businessman. I think he took 30% of Elvis's money. I'm not sure about the exact cut, but I know it was a big one.
He was like the first to really get into the movies, and then the Beatles did some movies, right? And some other groups as well did movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he made a whole career of it. But what was really great was by the time we get to the last couple of years of the 60s, he decided he wanted to get back into live performance, and he did, I think it was 68, when he did the TV Singer TV special. A very big gamble, but it paid off. And he really reinvented himself as a rock and roll hero again. And then very quickly he became the ultimate cabaret performer in Vegas. And he just had a whole third career. I mean, he never left America. I think he played a handful of gigs in the mid, about 56, maybe 57 in Canada, and that was it. And some people think it's because his manager, Colonel Parker, actually left Holland. He was Dutch national, and he came to America. You read stories, whether true or not, that he was fleeing from a murder thing, and a lot of the sources reckon that he didn't particularly want Elvis to travel because he couldn't travel with him because he was very concerned he might not get back into America, and that could well be true. But I mean, Elvis's 70s career in Vegas is again, it's just a completely new facet to him.
But he didn't abandon his old songs when he changed. He took those old songs and brought them with him.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a good smattering of classic as Ray Charles stuff in some of his in one of his films. See, and certainly the Vegas years, he does. He did a lot of his 50s material. I mean, the thing about Elvis, obviously, he died in 77, so he's not going to be on tour. But there have been hologram tours with Elvis.
Can you imagine that's going to be the future of rock and roll when everybody's dead and the music industry has no good new artists? They're just going to have hologram tours.
Absolutely. And you can see, I mean, that can work so well. If you imagine most concerts, certainly the bigger venues, and when you're looking at the stage, I mean, you're looking at somebody who's about an inch tall. So you would get virtually the same. Well, you would get very much the same. Virtually, that was an unintended pun.
Now sit your butt down.
The John Lebang Show will be right back.
And I promise you'll love it. Yes.
I'd like to take a quick second here to tell you about our new sponsor, Quality One Painting. For interior and exterior painting needs, call Tom at Quality One, 313-982-2986. Tom will give you free estimates, senior discounts, and I can tell you from meeting the gentleman, he's one of the nicest guys on the face of the planet. So for a quality paint job with a professional attitude, call Tom at Quality One Painting. That's 313-982-2986. 313-982-2986. Quality One Painting.
Hey, man, it's at the bottom of the hour, man. Do you know where your kids are, man?
If you want to contact the John Lebang Show, feel free to send an email to jlebang@live.com. And if you're on Twitter, look him up at John Lebang. And don't forget to go to his Facebook page at The John Lebang Show. Banger. Now here's John.
We're now to the next matchup. And this one, I mean, I have to give Freddie Mercury some credit. He's been rolling through artist after artist, and he took out Kurt Cobain rather easily as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely trounced him. But I think Freddie Mercury, if I'd have had to put money on somebody who's going to be in the last four, I think Freddie Mercury would have been one of the ones I'd have been expecting to have done really quite well.
Yeah, I would have took that bet myself.
I mean, he's got that level of flamboyance. He's got an unbelievable vocal range. He's got a massive personality.
And unfortunately, Kurt Cobain just went up against him.
But I mean, the interesting guy. I mean, he met up with Chris Novoselic in '85, and they were in a band together called the Stiff Woodies, which I thought was a great name for a band.
We all get Stiff Woodies.
But I mean, you mentioned earlier that it was '91 with Nevermind and Smells Like Teen Spirit that probably was a major thing for them.
Yeah, they had a really great short career. They had Bleach right before that. That was on Sub Pop. It was okay. They came out with Nevermind, which was like, it was almost an instant hit. He was one of these artists that went from nothing to major success, and he couldn't handle it, and it ended up killing him in a suicide.
Yeah, exactly. 94.
He gets criticized for his guitar playing because he was purposely sloppy. He just had this thing about him, but the tunes were all catchy. And he had something, and I always reference this back in the day, Derek, and not many people agreed with me, but you could hear just little flavors of the Beatles inside the Nirvana music. But he had punk in there, and he had a lot of other things mixed in there.
And I think he also had this very cool image.
Exactly, and he was a left-handed guitar player. He played I forgot what kind of guitar that was, but it was very unique to him. Unfortunately, he couldn't maintain because the pressures of that stardom, and I think that's probably what happened, is he just got too big, too fast, and he couldn't acclimate himself to all that fame so quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look back on various careers and how some people really don't handle fame very well.
Couple of guys that handled one handled fame really well. The other one, he didn't stick around with us either, but he happened to beat Mr. James Brown, who had a pretty good run.
He did. I was surprised to see James Brown get that far, because it was a fairly close run thing with Jim Morrison. But I mean, James Brown's one of these guys who's been around for absolutely ever. And he was very much known as the godfather of soul. But he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1986, which was their inaugural year. And I always thought that was quite interesting.
And well-deserved, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, he's an awesome guy. I remember this would be probably the late 70s. I was living in London at the time, and a mate of mine was a sort of professional road kind of guy, and he was involved with putting on a show at the Hammersmith Odeon in London. And I got this call about 2:00 in the afternoon. This is a Saturday. He said, "Shell, doing James Brown at the Odeon. Do you want to come along?" Yes. So I went down to the Hammersmith Odeon. It's a sort of cinema theatre, about 2,500-3,000 seater, I think, single balcony. And James Brown came on to do his sound check, and he had a dressing gown and 3 enormous curlers in his hair. Absolutely incredible.
He's the one, or at least that I believe this. He's the one that perfected the little scream, like "Hey!" all that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's where so much of that comes from.
Hey!
So much influence on people like Jagger in terms of strutting around the stage.
I would even say, and we'd have to talk to Brian Johnson of AC/DC, but I think there's a little bit of James Brown going on with Brian Johnson there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's been really influential on so many different singers. But I mean, what I love about James Brown's stage show, and has been for a very long time, the first single he ever released, "Please, Please, Please," back at the beginning of 1956, he uses to climax his show, and that's where he's singing that song, and then he collapses to his knees on stage, and one of the stage hands will come over, put a coat round him and help him to his feet, and he'll start to walk off, still singing, and then he'll go into another big chorus and collapse to the floor again. Oh, absolutely awesome stage show.
Yeah, and losing to Jim Morrison's, I don't think it's a bad thing, because he went through Levi Stubbs, he went through Pete Townsend, Daltrey, and Moon. I mean, that's a good spot for Mr. James Brown.
Oh, I think so. I think that's fair enough, really, in terms of the people who went further. I mean, he died quite a while ago, back in 2006. But I mean, what an influential guy. And I think, as you say, influential on the singing style, the performance style of people for generations afterwards.
Now, the next matchup, I held this one very dearly, because these are two of my favorites.
Yeah.
And Ronnie James Dio going up against Angus and the Singers with Brian and Bon.
This was another one that was a close run thing. Because I'm pretty sure, as I was watching the figures, that Ronnie James Dio was actually in the lead for a while.
Yeah, I was sweating it out. Because I leaned towards AC/DC just a little bit.
I think it was a deserved win, AC/DC there. But I mean, what a career! I mean, Rainbow, Black Sabbath, and obviously Dio. He's been in some amazing places.
He has played with some of the best guitarists of all time.
Yeah.
Ritchie Blackmore with Rainbow. Beyond Man of the Silver Mountain, you got to put in some of that early Rainbow stuff, because that first album, Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, is just some incredible stuff where you can see that there was very little Deep Purple influence on that album.
Yeah, it was a complete change of style, wasn't it?
Definitely. And then you bring in Ronnie James Dio, this what was he, 4'10" or something like that? He's a little short guy with the biggest voice in rock and roll. I mean, just great.
Yeah, exactly.
And before Rainbow, he was in a band called Elf. Apropos, he was the short guy that looked like a little elf.
Right. Very appropriate name.
But then, he left Rainbow, went to Black Sabbath, spent a couple albums there.
That's right.
Famously with Heaven and Hell and the Mob Rules. Then he went on to his own solo career, which everything he touched was great. Yeah,
and he's been back with Black Sabbath on an every now and again basis, isn't he?
Yep. And after when there was a dispute there about who owned the name Black Sabbath, so they went on tour towards the end there as Heaven and Hell. And it was Vinny Appice on drums, Dio on vocals, Geezer and Tony on the bass and guitar, respectively. Yeah. So now we're moving on to the final four. See how fast it's going now, Derek? I mean, we had all these guys to talk about. Now we're narrowing it down.
That's right, and quite a bit of info about these guys is coming out in the previous chats. But you look at Jim Morrison, he lost out to Freddie Mercury, which again probably isn't a surprise.
No, to be honest with you, I thought Jim was going to win this one. I thought this is where Freddie was going to lose all his steam, but I was wrong.
He's another one. Jim Morrison, been around since the mid 60s. First recording with Rick and the Ravens. Back in 65, and the first album, of course, was 67,
and that was the Doors. Yeah,
and then the famous appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show, and really a sign of things to come, because when they were doing the rehearsals for Light My Fire, and there's reference to Couldn't Get Much Higher, and interestingly enough, 1967, radio stations, TV stations did not like drug references. So many records were banned at that time.